Welcome, everybody, to Inside Boxing Daily on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. Inside Boxing Daily is brought to you by BetNow.eu, where you can get a 50% cashback bonus up to your first deposit of $1,000. Just go to BetNow.eu, use the promo code TRUTH50, TRUTH50. I am your, also the Retired Boxers Foundation, don't want to forget them, with, of course, the lovely Jackie Richardson and the just as lovely Alex Ramos. I am your co-host, Mike Goodpaster, and right now I'd like to welcome in my co-host, Jeremiah Preisser. How you doing, Jeremiah?
I'm always good, man, whenever we get to talk some boxing, so let's get this ball rolling.
All right, and we have a special guest tonight. This will mean nobody's listening, but we got a listener. Hamed, how you doing, Hamed?
Yeah, hello, Mike. How's it going? It's good to be back talking boxing. It's good.
We're doing good, and we're going to start off with a little Canelo Alvarez, who, I mean, he's not going to fight in September because he wants what's best for the fans. I think that that's bullshit, and he just don't want to fight Triple G. What do you think, Jeremiah?
Yeah, man, I think he's just. I think it's all in spite of Golovkin. I think at this point I think he's upset by all the shit talking that Golovkin did after he failed his PED test and just all the stuff that went on before the second fight. I think he doesn't want to give him a payday anymore. I don't think he wants to fight him, and so I think. It says a lot. I mean, I think it seems that there's genuine animosity towards Golovkin when he punts the biggest payday in boxing and the biggest revenue-generating day of the year for boxing to fight Sergey Kovalev. I don't think he wants it, man. I just don't think he likes Golovkin, and I'm not convinced we're ever going to get the third Golovkin fight anymore.
All right, Hamed, what's your take?
I think it's a bit bad for boxing because I don't know how they're going to recover in terms of what fight they'll put on in September, but I'm kind of sick of Canelo and Golovkin keep fighting like on the same date, but I did kind of still want to see it, but I'm not too sure. It's not a good look for Canelo and DAZN.
Well, I don't think it's DAZN's fault. I think DAZN is trying to force him to. And with everything that's come to light with this, Jeremiah, it seems like Canelo wants to do what Canelo wants to do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the fact is that what DAZN approved two opponents for him, and there was Gennady Golovkin, it was Sergey Kovalev, and again, it just seems as if Alvarez doesn't want to go through it again, and. You know, I know a lot of people, because you kind of, you get in the social media sphere and you see what exactly is going on and what is being said. And to be honest with you, it doesn't seem like a lot of people are going to be particularly upset if a third fight doesn't come off. But, it still does hurt boxing in the sense that we're not getting the biggest fight available at middleweight. In fact, maybe it's the biggest fight in boxing, regardless of weight class. So, I mean, I think it's a bit disappointing. It's not because I need to see Alvarez and Golovkin fight a third time because, we've talked about it on the show a number of times. I think Gennady Golovkin will lose that fight clear. Yeah, I think he'll lose it pretty clearly. I mean, I just think he's further past his prime.
Because I don't think Canelo wants to fight him. And if you hated somebody, wouldn't you just go beat their ass again? But he lost the first two fights.
I understand that.
He lost the first fight, clearly. The second fight was close. But the majority of people thought Triple G won the fight. And the thing is this. Canelo had to go through hell to win that fight. We watched him against Danny Jacobs. He did enough to win. Triple G's not going to allow him that, even if he's old, because Triple G is going to go to war with him. Canelo don't need that.
Well, I mean, that's part of the reason why I would like to see the third fight is because Golovkin brings out the dog in Alvarez, and I think that's what we need. I mean, in terms of entertainment, which brings the fans, which brings revenue, it just makes sense to me. But the problem is I don't think Alvarez wants it. Again, we might get Kovalev, the details are still out, and it's funny because I have seen some people scoff at the notion that Golovkin would be or Kovalev would be an easier fight than Golovkin. And I don't think that's the case at all. In fact, I think we need a lot more context to that before we make that sort of assumption, because we talked about on the show before with Hamed. It's like, if you have a catch weight for that fight, does that not mean that the fight is likely going to be easier than the Golovkin fight, even the second Golovkin fight? So, I don't understand where some people are going with this, where they're like, hey, we don't need a third Golovkin fight. And then the options they're throwing around are guys like Demetrius Andrade. I think that's fine, but again, we've got to acknowledge that there's a business side to this, and DAZN doesn't want to see that. Andrade does not put butts in the seats. DAZN is trying to give Canelo Alvarez a huge payday. We're talking about for his career, $365 million. But there are just few options for Alvarez right now that DAZN really wants. And again, they narrowed it down to two guys, Kovalev and Golovkin, and Kovalev really seems like he's going to be the guy who gets it.
Yeah, but what happens if Kovalev loses to Yarde? I don't think that will happen, but we've seen stranger stuff in boxing, Hamed. And as you said, Hamed, this is bad for boxing because it is still the biggest fight that can be made, because I think it's the only fight out there, outside of maybe Spence and Crawford down the line, that can even do $1 million pay-per-view.
I think it is probably arguably the biggest fight. I think the only other fight I thought that might be bigger was Joshua and Wilder. I'm not too sure, though, economically in America, how would that do? Now that Joshua's lost, even before that, it was probably tough to choose which one would be bigger. But I heard that Kathy Duva said on one of the podcasts, I think it was with Steve Kim, he was saying that the Canelo Kovalev fight would have happened at 175, so I think that's cleared something up, that Canelo was willing to fight Kovalev at 175. The person who turned that fight down and deal was Kovalev, to my knowledge, but I don't blame him too much. He did have a mandatory challenger, and they were offering him, I think the money they're offering him wasn't fair, especially if you see how much he earned against Ward. In the first fight, he earned like only $2 or $3 million.
Hell, he only earned like $15 in the second fight.
And Ward earned more somehow. And then in the rematch,
I think he had to go on food stamps after the second fight.
Yeah, in the second fight, Ward had, I think, earned about 7 or 8. That was like the comparison in the second fight was a lot bigger than the first. But in the first, Kovalev was the champion, and I think he should have made a lot more money than that, especially the way the officiating went. I think a Kovalev-Canelo fight is most probably next, but I do agree, Yard is live. I think Yard in that fight, if that fight goes deep, or if Yard could take his shots, he's got a chance. Being in Russia, I do still think that Kovalev.
Yeah, but we have no idea whether Yard can take a shot because he hasn't fought anybody really.
Yeah, I don't think at the moment it's safe to say he can, because what I've seen of him, it doesn't look like he's actually even taken a single shot.
Well, he's a guy to me that looks like he hasn't really improved a whole hell of a lot over the last couple of years either.
He hasn't really fought anyone, and
I know.
the amateur background was very little, so I think that's dangerous. But I think they think it's like perfect timing where they could catch Kovalev at the right time. I don't think this fight would have been competitive if Yard fought him, say, anywhere between 2014 and 16. Even after the first Ward fight, I think he would have got knocked out and beaten convincingly.
Well, I think he's going to get knocked out and beaten convincingly anyways. I mean, he hasn't fought anybody. His last fight was against Travis Reeves. Walter, I can't pronounce his last name, so I'm not even going to act like I can. Darius Sek. Tony Averlante or whatever. I mean, there's nothing here that
Murderer's Row.
Yeah, he shouldn't even be ranked in the top 10 with what he's done because he hasn't done anything.
Yeah, and I don't blame anyone thinking that. I think the same. I don't think Yard has got much chance in that. On paper, if you just look at it, I just think body. Just looking at the two bodies, the way. From a point of view from the last fight, personal-wise, Kovalev, I don't think he's the same guy. But I don't know, he still might be enough to beat Yard. I don't think Yard is that good as well, but there is an unknown factor. I don't know if he could take a shot. So if he can, then you never know. With Canelo, I do think that Canelo Golovkin 3 will happen at some point. I'm not too sure if September might be too early. I think some people, including Canelo, is kind of sick of that. But I think the thing is, he believes he won the second fight. I don't know. I did hear him saying after the first fight he thought he won that as well. I don't think he did. But I think in his mind is he can't knock Golovkin out. And if he feels he beat him, then even if he is to win the third fight decisively, I'm not too sure if he could stop Golovkin, and that might be a factor. But I don't know. Fighting Kovalev before Golovkin, I'm not too sure that'll work out, because I don't think him beating Kovalev is a given as well.
No,
Well,
I don't think it's a given either. Just if they fight at 175, I don't think it's a given. I think if it's 170 or 172, it might be. Jeremiah?
Well, yeah, I was going to say, well, and what about the weight jump that is going on there? Because if he actually goes to 175 and then he jumps back down to 160 to fight Golovkin, I mean, is that the best course of action to take? I mean, again, I just don't know. I mean, it seems as if with this whole Golden Boy press release thing, it just feels as if they're punting it all together, as if Golovkin just isn't in the cards. And like Hamed said, they're just hoping that he gets upset, because I think the pressure's on Golovkin too. I mean, Alvarez has the most pressure because he's getting the biggest contract here, but there's a lot of pressure on Golovkin as well because he's got to fight somebody worthwhile in the fall now too. So it's like if he fights Monkey, I think that's a fairly easy contest for him, but it's. I just think Golden Boy would like him to be upset, and then they can just say, hey, we don't have to bother with it anymore. Don't have to worry about it. We can just, that. Right, so the weight jump combined with this WBC franchise shit, which essentially gives him free reign to do whatever he likes, and I think because of that, he's going to hang on to this franchise champion thing, and whether the Alphabet Soup organization starts stripping him or not, I just don't think he's really going to care, because again, he can do whatever he likes if he continues to fight at least tough opposition. He's going to collect huge paydays. And again, the WBC is not going to strip him for it. That's exactly why they created a special title. So to me, it just seems like Alvarez is just going to do what he likes for a while now. And again, not whatever he likes. He's going to have pressure from DAZN, but he just has more free reign than a lot of other guys, because I don't think he's going to feel the pressure of defending his title so much anymore. But it's one of those things like, and I want to go to the Kovalev Yarde thing too. I mean, I don't think Yard's fought anybody either, but he is young. He does have pretty good hand speed. I think he is one of the better hitters at 175. And I know a lot of Brits are. I've seen a lot of Brits are actually higher on Botsy Botsy. They're a bit higher on him than they are Yard, and I can understand why, just looking at their amateur pedigrees and the fact that Yard hasn't done a whole lot. But I do think there is potential for Yard to upset Kovalev just because he is a big hitter. He does have good hand speed. I mean, I'm like you guys. I do favor Kovalev to outbox him and possibly get him out of there. I mean, I think – we see Kovalev's work, and he hasn't really been stomping a lot of guys lately. But part of that is because he fought Andre Ward, who's defensively tight and wily as hell. I still think Kovalev in this fight has a good opportunity to stop Yard. I mean, I still think that Kovalev is a bigger hitter than Yard is, and it's funny because when Hamed said, maybe they see that it's an opportunity to upset Kovalev. I don't know, maybe you guys would disagree, but it seems like it's that way for Kovalev and Canelo and his people as well. It's like he's ripe for the picking.
Yeah, and I think that's what he's doing, Hamed. I think that he is just trying to keep all the cards, kind of like Sugar Ray Leonard once you get past 1982.
I think Canelo, I don't know if some people agree or whether or not people agree. I think Canelo would have a better chance. If you take the size away, just based on skill, with Yard, to me, looks like a body builder type, a guy who's very untested, unproven. He hasn't got any amateur background. I think some people would probably think of someone like Anthony Joshua when just before he fought, I think it was Dillian Whyte, was untested, but Joshua was tested as an amateur. He actually did win the gold medal. I think that might have been a bit controversial, but in the World Championships and in the Olympics, he actually fought some very good fighters. But I'm not even too sure who he's actually fought in the amateurs. What I read to my note was he had about only 18 or 17 amateur fights. I think I might be a bit off, but that's what I heard. I'm pretty sure it was under 20 amateur fights or something like that. That's way too inexperienced. So I get why they took so long. I just think that competition was bad. But Canelo's an A-star fighter. I think Canelo, regardless of the weight, I don't think it's too much. 175, I think he could probably carry his speed and body shots.
Yeah, because he'll have the steroids too, though.
Yeah, maybe that as well.
He's off Fada, isn't he?
Yeah, that's what I heard as well. I think it's Michael Montero said that. So, yeah, that could be a factor as well. And Kovalev, I don't think looks to me like someone who's taken anything. He's always had problems with gassing, and to me, his power seems natural. I don't think Kovalev is on anything or has taken anything. But that fight, I think, would have made maybe more sense if it was after the Triple G. Like Jeremiah said, that's really weird, going up to 175 and then coming back down. I don't know if that could take a toll. That could affect his body as well. I don't know how much he'd have to dehydrate as well to put up that much weight. If he fights Kovalev, he's going to have to come in around the 170 mark. He's not going to be weighing anywhere between 160 and 168. So it's unlikely. I don't think that'll be possible. But with the Golovkin fight, I think he always will be there. But I'm not too sure if fans and if the zone will still want to see if, say, Kovalev and Canelo fight and Canelo gets knocked out or beaten convincingly, is that fight still what they want? Or because I thought now that Canelo and Kovalev was off, that Canelo would maybe go down the Jaime Munguia route, but it looks like that's off as well, and maybe Golovkin might end up fighting Munguia in September. If not, I think Golovkin and Murata, who just beat Brandt in Japan, is another option. But for Canelo, to me, it looks like he's just waiting on Kovalev, and that could be risky as well.
Yeah. Next up, we have a fight that looks like it's getting a bit made between Artur Beterbiev, who said today he has signed a contract to fight Alexander Gvozdyk in a unification fight for the IBF and WBC light heavyweight titles on October the 18th. I like this matchup. I favor Beterbiev. What about you, Jeremiah?
Well, I want to preface by saying that this is actually for the light heavyweight championship of the world. I mean, in my opinion.
There's no such thing anymore, Jeremiah.
Well, to me, Gvozdyk is the lineal champion, and that's all I really give a shit about. I mean, again, I've talked about this at length. It's not as if I hang my hat on the lineal championship and act as if it's some end-all, be-all, because, frankly, I think we could do better than all this stuff. The lineal has its flaws. Obviously, the alphabet soup organizations have their flaws as well. But in my eyes, Gvozdyk's the man who beat the man who beat the man, yada, yada, yada. And I like this fight a lot, too. I mean, 175 has been dripping with talent for a while now, and we've all wanted to see, one of these big-name guys, especially in the top 4, top 5, fight one another. The Kovalevs, the Bivols, the Gvozdyks, the Beterbievs, and we finally get one. Actually, I was hoping to have Kovalev versus Beterbiev initially, but this suffices. This is a perfectly fine backup, in my opinion, and I actually favor Gvozdyk in this one. I think Beterbiev is a strong guy. I think if he comes out and bullies Gvozdyk, I think that's his best bet. And if he touches you, it seems like he can get pretty much anybody out of there. But to me, and of course I could be wrong, we won't know till fight night, but this seems to suit Gvozdyk a bit better. I don't think Beterbiev I don't think he's fast afoot. Gvozdyk to me can box better. I think Gvozdyk is certainly capable of hurting Beterbiev. I think he's capable of putting Beterbiev with maybe one shot, too. I mean, to me, Gvozdyk is heavy-handed, but he doesn't always get a lot of leverage into his shots. Like sometimes he'll pity-pat a little bit, or, who just in an effort to throw combinations and get there quicker, he'll do that. But to me, this serves Gvozdyk better. I think he's going to stick behind the jab, give lateral movement, be tight, be technical, and I think he could score a stoppage late in the fight here. But it's a damn good fight. I really, really like it. These are the kind of fights that need to be made. And with this and Prograis and Josh Taylor, I think we got at least 2 fights to look forward to this year.
Yeah. Who do you favor, Hamed? Because the great thing about this fight is this. There's been very few times this year we disagreed on who was going to win a fight, Jeremiah.
Yeah, it's true.
I think we also got Porter Spence, so I don't know if that's the best fight that could be made at welterweight, but that's like the first unification in the welterweight division since I think you'd have to go back to, was it Danny Garcia and Keith Thurman, which was like now almost 2.5 years ago.
Yeah, but doesn't that make Keith Thurman the welterweight champion of the world?
Oh, no, I'm talking about the unification, though.
Oh, we don't care about belts here. We only care about
that's true. Yeah, just belts. But to me, that's probably one of the best fights that could be made at light heavyweight between Gvozdyk and Beterbiev. I'm not too sure if I agree, though. I think Gvozdyk would have a better chance against Bivol because I don't think Bivol will knock Gvozdyk out. I don't think Bivol is as heavy-handed.
I'm starting to really like you, Hamed. Jeremiah, I think not so much now, though.
Shut up.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, I think it's a compliment. I was going to say, though, Beterbiev is heavy-handed.
It's not.
Oh, shut up, Jeremiah. Jeremiah is just mad because he doesn't have John Einreinhofer here to agree with him. And I would like to bring up, if you listened to the show last week, I said Nathan Gorman would not get out of the 5th round against Daniel Dubois.
Yeah, I'm not too sure why so many people pick Gorman. I don't know. I thought they saw something in Gorman. But I was going to say with Gvozdyk, he's quite chinny as well. I know Beterbiev is chinny. He's been down. I do think, though, a lot of people have kind of slept on Callum Johnson. I think he was a lot better fighter than some people give him credit for. And he proved it, even though it's only Shawnee Monahan. But the way he knocked him out, I think Monahan was bloodied up. And I think too many people just read too much stock into that. He did get clipped as well with Jeff Page, but that's, I think, down to Beterbiev, the way he sometimes fights and rushes his punches. I don't think he's as chinny as some people suggest, but with Gvozdyk, I do think Gvozdyk might be the better boxer, but if it comes down to power, I do favor Beterbiev big. With Bivol, I think that might have suited Gvozdyk's style a lot more because then it come down to boxing, and then maybe Gvozdyk would have the upper hand in power. I don't think Bivol hits. I think he hits the least hardest out of 4. I think Kovalev and Beterbiev might be the most heavy-handed. I think Gvozdyk is somewhere in the middle, but he's also been down before himself, which was a heavy knockdown. I think it was against Tommy Karpenki. I know it was a knockdown, and some people do get clipped when they've actually had their chin checked early on in their career. But even with Stevenson, when he clipped him, I do think Gvozdyk can be knocked out. You could argue the same with Beterbiev, but if it becomes a shootout, then that could be interesting. But I'm not too sure, what the right style would be in that fight, because for Gvozdyk, he can actually probably knock him out or outbox him. With Beterbiev, I just think there's only one way to go about. He's just going to have to try and draw him into a firefight.
All right, let's go ahead. Let's talk about something you just talked about. Errol Spence, Sean Porter, looks like it's made for September the 28th. Hamed, what kind of shot do you give Porter here?
After the last fight, I think Porter's a live dog. I don't think Spence hits as hard as now that we've seen, as some people were suggesting. I think his power might be, I don't know if overrated is the right word, but I don't think he hits as hard as some people were saying. Because, you shouldn't be getting out guys like Mikey Garcia, even if you're outboxing him and you're using your boxing skills, even when you hit him. If you really hit as hard as some people thought, or suggesting the way I think he knocked out, I think it's Chris Algieri and I think it might have been Peterson. But I think if it comes down to styles and make fights, then maybe Porter does have a chance of roughing him up. But I wasn't too impressed with Porter's last performance, and when Porter decides to box and use his feet and that, I think he's not effective. Porter is very effective, in my opinion, when he's actually trying to bull rush his opponents. And I think that's what won him the fight with Danny Garcia when he actually tried doing that. He's done it in a lot of his fights. He did it with Broner, Berto, and he can use his head and get a bit dirty, but that if it's effective and he could get away with it, then I think that could ruffle Spence's feathers. But he's gonna have to try and draw him into a fight. I would still pick Spence. So I think maybe the question in that fight is, can Spence stop him? I'm not too sure. If Kell Brook and Keith Thurman couldn't stop him, I can't. I don't know if I could see a stoppage in that, because Porter's a tough guy. I think he's only been down once to my memory.
Yeah, and I think this also is kind of twofold. What kind of shot do you give Porter Jeremiah? But also, is Spence just moving to pay-per-view too early in his career? Because I don't see how this is going to do a whole hell of a lot. And hell, Floyd Mayweather wouldn't fight on pay-per-view till he was about 9 or 10 years in.
Well, yeah, and even then he had to fight Oscar De La Hoya before he really, turned the corner, before a lot of people knew who he was. And, I mean, that's the kind of name that Oscar was. But, well, yeah, I had heard that Errol Spence had demanded that this fight be on pay-per-view. Again, that's what I had heard. I haven't checked any sources or anything. I found that kind of interesting because I'm not exactly sure what he's done to, peg himself as some regular pay-per-view star, but he's not. I mean, yeah, he had a sizable number of people show up to watch him in Texas against Mikey Garcia, but, come on, none of us are fooling ourselves, especially as Americans. None of us are fooling ourselves into thinking that it wasn't by and large the Mexicans that they were banking on, because that's most reliable demographic in terms of money in the United States. So
how many pay-per-view did Garcia and Spence sell? Do you remember?
I don't remember. Wasn't it around
400?
Yeah, I think it was around 400. Yeah, because I think I remember us talking about how it did better numbers than Wilder and Fury. So I think it was about 400,000. But that's my thing is I don't know. Maybe he's letting it get to his head and he thinks that he can generate those numbers consistently. But and maybe the fact that Sean Porter's actually been on network TV and he's done good ratings a few times. Maybe they think that that's going to help his cause. But yeah, at pay-per-view, when we're talking about 70 plus American dollars and I don't know, fucking 85 pounds or whatever the hell you guys use now. I'm just kidding. But yeah, it's one of those things that to me, it just doesn't seem to fit. I mean, Porter is a popular guy, but when he's fighting people, I don't look at Porter as the sell, because when he's fighting Thurman, to me Thurman seemed like the guy in that fight, and when he's fighting Danny Garcia, to me Danny Garcia just feels like he's got more oomph behind him in terms of fan base. So to me Porter seems to be one of those guys that a lot of people like, but he's not one of those guys that is we're not going to really open our wallets for him. So yeah, I don't understand the whole pay-per-view angle, but then again, we talked about PBC and how they're doing too many damn pay-per-views this year anyways. My assessment of this is, Porter, I think he's got to, and again, sometimes it gets confusing because you see some of these guys come out, Porter and his father, I know they've got a lot of respect in their boxing ability. They like to mix it up, make a guy think and, when is Porter going to bum rush? When's he going to come in, rough me up a little bit? And that's all good and well, but Porter really needs to be on the aggressive side here. He needs to put his foot on the gas and just needs to go balls to the wall in terms of his aggression, because he's the shorter guy. He's got shorter arms. And, Spence has shown that he's a pretty good infighter, but Porter needs to take a page out of Spence's book and bang to the body as hard as he can, as often as he can. That's what I like to see. I like to see if a body puncher can actually take it to the body, because it's one of those things and it's this way with a lot of stylists, where you don't see a lot of pure boxers fight other pure boxers and have to chase them, and you don't see a lot of body punchers take body shots, because they're usually the ones dominating that arena. So I just hope Porter really stays on the gas pedal, but I don't think he's going to win. I just think at distance, Spence is going to be too much, and I actually think that Spence will probably get the best of it on the inside as well. I think Spence will probably earn a big decision here. I think he can stop Porter late if he bangs to the body consistently, but a decision is that's what I'm leaning to right now.
I still think Spence is overrated. I've said it for 3 years. I've been beat up on this, but someday he's going to fight Terrence Crawford, and everybody's going to learn. He's not Sugar Ray Leonard. Quick comment from Pete. Interesting fight, not pay-per-view worthy. I think that's pretty obvious. I don't know how many fights that could be made would even be pay-per-view worthy anymore, Jeremiah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking about it.
Spence
And
Crawford, maybe Wilder Fury, but when I talk about pay-per-view worthy, I mean fights that everybody wants to see, and you might get 1 million buys, and I don't know if there's any of them out there anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think Alvarez Golovkin is about the only one. I don't know, Spence
but I don't
Crawford.
think it'll do 1 million.
Yeah, again, I think it depends on the context. Like a lot of this stuff, it depends on the context. I mean, if you put Wilder and Fury on, and then you actually have a damn good undercard, yeah, I think you'll sell pretty well. Golovkin Alvarez seems pretty consistent to me, and even though you might not make 1 million the next time out, I do think you'll still get pretty close to that mark. I don't know, maybe Garcia Lomachenko. I don't know. I mean, there's just really not much in the boxing world.
Yeah, but don't you think Garcia Lomachenko was kind of destroyed by Garcia's beatdown with Earl Spence? Spence didn't do a lot, but it was dominating. It was in front of a lot of people. I mean, I think the fight would do all right for a lightweight fight, but it's not by our well.
Yeah, well, and the part of the problem too is Mikey Garcia's, solo business ventures. I think, because he was obviously deluded in thinking that he could go up and beat Errol Spence, and I think he's still deluded in. Well, I guess that fight's off now. At least that's what I saw. I did see Rick Glazer and I think some other person say that Mikey Garcia versus Danny Garcia is not going to happen. So I'm not exactly sure what Danny Garcia does, but I think if Danny Garcia moved down to 135 and actually made it exciting again, I think they could sell. But that's the problem. I think him deluding himself and go to 147 and kind of destroying the whole undefeated thing, yeah, I think it hurt it. I don't think it killed it. Again, it all depends. I mean, again, it just depends. If Garcia goes down and knocks a few guys out and they're world-class talent, then I think we could still get something.
All right, so we will take a quick glance at the Pacquiao-Thurman fight and a little bit of the undercard so Med can give us his take. But first, I wanted to talk about something else. Wonder what it was, Jeremiah. Dana Dubois. Let's talk about the heavyweights this past weekend. Dubois stops Gorman in the 5th round. Joe Joyce. I mean, it's amazing a statue can win that many fights. What do you think about the fights, Ahmed?
That was a good card. I was going to say he wasn't on pay-per-view here, so that was a good change. I'm not
anytime you don't have to pay for it, it's a good card. Now it doesn't even matter what fights are on, right?
Yeah, I'm not subscribed to BT Sports because it's just all these subscriptions, it just add up, and when they're not even showing the fights you want and they go on pay-per-view, then it's not really worth it. But it was good for guys that got BT Sports because it wasn't a pay-per-view. And I was going to say Mikey and Danny, they were saying it was going to be a pay-per-view, and that's too many pay-per-views for PBC, who once said that PBC is going to bring boxing back to free TV. So it's not a good look for PBC, and it's not a good look at the moment for British boxing. But this was a good card. I thought you had a double header with the heavyweights. I wasn't impressed with Joe Joyce. I haven't really been impressed with him. I think the only time I kind of was impressed with him was in the Olympics final. Not his style. He's still way too slow in that, but I thought he did good in the final. I don't know if robbed is the right word, but I think he kind of was misunfortunate because I thought he won and he beat Tony Yoka. I think it was close. It's like, what was it, 3 rounds, like 2 rounds to 1. But I thought he clearly won his rounds and should have got the gold medal in the Olympic final. But since he's been a professional, he hasn't really looked too good. And he's just, I think, he looks slower each time. And even though he beat Jennings, I don't think it was that one-sided as the 2 cards suggested. I think it's maybe about 8 rounds to 4, 7 rounds to 5. I think he clearly won a close competitive fight, but he wasn't too impressive. I think he's 32 or 3. I would like to see him maybe fight Dubois either the next fight or the fight after next, but I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think he's going to want to take that risk. With Dubois and Gorman, I was really impressed. I think Dubois has got more flip side than Joshua. I do think maybe more natural ability as well. He's only 21. I think people forget when guys like Joshua 21. I don't think Joshua's even. I don't even think he was a well-known amateur at that time. He was maybe, I think, just started. Maybe might have been in the World Championship, but I don't think he was that well-known. With other guys, the only other guy that was with a British title at around about that age was Tyson Fury, and I think he's probably arguably right now the most skillful or maybe the most gifted heavyweight at the moment. But Dubois looks good. I don't want him to rush him. That's the only thing. I think this was a good learning fight, a good win, good experience to fight someone like Gorman. I was surprised that so many experts and guys I respect that were picking Gorman, but I thought he passed with a good performance. I thought he did a very good job on Gorman and he knocked him out. And the jab was impressive.
Is it possible with the state of the heavyweight division you could put him against anybody and it would be rushing it except maybe Tyson Fury? Because what I see with Dubois, and I know I brought this up, I think the first time I ever talked about it, like the third or fourth fight he had, I think we had John Raspani on Jeremiah, and the thing that has always struck me with him is how patient he is and how relaxed he is in the ring. So even though he's a guy with a lot of just kind of muscle bound, I mean, to me, he just strikes me as a guy that's not going to get tired because he is always calm, patient, relaxed, and that's impressive for a 21-year-old guy. And I think that right there impresses me more than anything about him.
Yeah, no, I think that's what I appreciate about most about him too. Is he just looks poised.
I was really wanting to see from Hamed because Hamed may be the new co-host on this show since he agreed with me tonight.
Don't I have to go back and forth with John? Yeah, I mean, no,
well,
I'm
John's
with you,
out
man.
on assignment for PBC trying to figure out who the next pay-per-view should be.
Did John get any back-end money from the PBC? Or is he just chilling?
You know what, Hamed, if we were getting money from the PBC, me and Jeremiah would be all for him.
Yeah, you'd hear a lot more positivity in our, the way we talk about him. You'd be like, pay-per-view, it's well worth it.
Hell yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing more exciting than dropping $80 on a fight you don't want to see.
Yeah, I mean, but no, I did like his poise. I mean, I think for a 21-year-old, that's nice to see. Like you said, he looks calm. Typically, muscle-bound guys don't have good stamina because they're just a bit tense. They got to lug around all that stuff. It's just not the ideal fighting body. But another thing, too, is that fundamentally, he seems pretty sound. I mean, even when he hurt Gorman, he didn't get crazy. There were times when he stepped on the gas pedal. Some like when he hurt him when he dropped him in the first time, and he was pecking and poking and seeing if he could get him out of there, and he couldn't. But he just stuck behind the 1-1-2, and eventually got the job done. So I do like that. It's just I'm a long way away from saying that he's anything like a world level talent. I mean, for me, it was just. And again, I don't know. We won't know until we see in the future.
Is there world level talent in the heavyweight division?
Well, yeah, relatively, yes. I do think so. Well, again, relative to the times, yeah.
Relative to the times, I think Daniel Dubois is in the top 3. I think he'd starch, or as the young ones would say, I think he would sleep Deontay Wilder. Because I don't think Deontay Wilder could handle him coming right at him. He would chin him. He would sleep him. He would cold cock him, which that sounds really dirty when I said it out loud, but it was all right in my head. But really, I think
it's possible.
Yeah, I think as calm and as patient as he is, and the way he puts pressure on, I don't think Wilder would ever be able to set his feet to throw a punch because he'd be too worried about getting chinned.
I don't know about now. I think it's way too early.
I think he's only 21 when he was born. How about that?
No, but the thing is, he hasn't really taken a big shot. I mean, Gorman is a good boxer, but he's not really a puncher.
Yeah, that's what I'm
like a woman. So I don't want him to look. Joe Joyce would be a good fight for guys that are saying that was meant to take place instead of Gorman. So I don't mind that fight. Maybe they could have one more fight against someone and then Joe Joyce, but that's a good fight. Joe Joyce can punch.
I don't think Joe Joyce is a good fight. I think Joe Joyce doesn't make it past 2 rounds with him. I really think Joe Joyce is not very good.
No, but he can punch, so he can test his chin. It's just Joe Joyce is so slow. I don't know if
But wait
he
a
could
second
get
now.
to.
Joe Joyce, I don't think can punch, and I think he proved that against Brian Jennings. I don't remember. I put it like this: Joe Joyce got hurt more with a body shot than Brian Jennings did getting hit in the face.
You could argue that. I don't think Joyce is the biggest hitter, but he can, I think, maybe punch harder than a lot of the guys that Dubois has fought. And that's not a knock on Dubois. He's just a prospect. The thing is, I think Jennings is a lot more durable than some people think. I think they just look at the Ortiz fight, and I think he got stopped by Rivas, but he doesn't really punch hard. So that's, I think, Jennings' big detriment. When you can't keep people off, you're bound to walk. And in the heavyweight division, I think it's hard to say who's actually chinny and not chinny. But Joyce, I think it's more to do with the way he throws his punches. He slaps. He doesn't really turn his wrists and that. But I don't think he can punch. I don't think he's the biggest puncher, though.
I think he'll get beat to death by Dubois. All right, so let's look at we haven't done a show in like a week, so just be quiet, Jeremiah. Go ahead. So you think Joe Joyce would beat Dubois?
Hell, I don't know right now. I don't think that highly of either one of them. It's just my thing about Dubois is he looks good, but I mean, Gorman was I thought Gorman's game plan was crap. I mean, all he kept doing was spamming the same stupid left hook, counter left hook. I mean, he didn't jab at all until the 4th round. He kept trying to counter with the left hook, over the right hand.
He did land a couple of shots. I thought
He did. Yeah, he did. But he became predictable quick. I mean, because that's all he was doing. Essentially, all he was doing was waiting for the right hand, trying to counter with a left hook, and then he would circle, reset, and then, do much of the same thing. Again, that's my problem is Gorman. And even when he was throwing the left hook, sometimes it looked wild. He was slapping with it a little bit. I just don't think Gorman really proved that much. Again, I do think it was somewhat Dubois as well. It's just, man, I really have to see him with some guy who's going to turn the heat up on him, land some punches, put pressure on him.
Good luck with that. It's the heavyweight division. There's like 2 guys that could do that.
Yeah, well, there are very few guys who can apply sustained pressure, but there are a lot of guys who can test his chin. And that's what I at least want to see that before I start making some sort of claim, because he looks good. Again, technically he's solid. I just really don't know.
I think he's average, which means he could reign for the next decade with these guys.
Who's average? So Joyce or Jen?
No, I think Dubois is average. I think that, pretty much the best fighters in the heavyweight division are average at best. I just don't think they're very good. And I think with Dubois, he's 21 years old. And if he improves, now see, this is the thing. I think with a lot of these guys we see, like Deontay Wilder, I don't think there's been a whole lot of improvement there. But a lot of that is also the fact that the competition's not that great. So it's hard to improve if you're not fighting better and better fighters. But I don't think the heavyweight division has ever been as bad as what it is right now.
I think it's more competitive than. I think when the Klitschko's were there, it was a lot more.
Yeah, but
tougher.
At least somebody was good.
Yeah, you had 2 very good fighters. That's what I'm trying to say. So even though the division was bad, you did still have 2. What's the word? 2 world-class A-star fighters. I think Vitaly was on and off with retirement. With Vladimir, I think he is an all-time great. I was going to say with Dubois, I do see. I was one of the few that said this a while back when he had like 1 or 2 professional fights. I think he could be as good or maybe better than Anthony Joshua, and he's maybe got more natural ability. I think some people thought it's just Frank Warren trying to get one on Eddie Hearn with a heavyweight, but I do see more flip side with him. I think I am sold on him. I do think that, I don't know about beating Wilder right now. I do think he'll beat Joe Joyce and he'll beat him comfortably. But I do think Joe Joyce will actually give him a fight, and a better fight than a lot of other guys at the moment, if you look domestically. Because if you think about, if they go down the route of, say, fighting the winner of David Price and David Allen, or say someone like Derek Chisora, I think Dubois would probably lay a lot of these guys out. With Joyce, I do think Joyce is a lot more hungry than those guys, and I think Joe Joyce may want to try and prove something. I think Joe Joyce is just way too slow and would end up getting knocked
I
out.
think
And
it would
I think
be exciting for the round or two to last, but
yeah.
I just don't see enough. You know, at least with
Fundamentally,
Dubois, he can move a little bit. And the thing that blows my mind, Hamed, are the boxing commentators over in the UK now may even be worse than American boxing commentators, and that's hard
they've
to
always
beat.
been worse.
I mean,
They've
they were talking about Joe Joyce's immaculate footwork and how that was one of the most impressive things about him.
Oh my God!
And
yeah,
I mean,
he
moves like he doesn't have feet. He just got stubs, and he's trying to keep from falling down.
Yeah, he looks like he looks like a pirate with two wooden legs or something. But no, well, and also I actually don't think his footwork is that bad. But
I don't either,
do.
but I just wanted to make a joke.
Yeah, it's just funny. But I don't know what the hell the judges were watching either. I mean, I didn't see Joyce win that many rounds against Jennings at all. I thought it was very close.
Yeah.
Because Joyce was throwing a lot of punches, but he sure as hell wasn't landing a lot of them.
Well, I'll tell you,
Jennings,
he was beating the shit out of his gloves, though.
Oh yeah. I'm sure his hands are feeling it, and taking ice baths afterwards.
Well, Brian Jennings, almost every punch
that's what
was
I'm
thrown.
saying.
He hit himself in the head more than Joe Joyce did.
I thought Jennings landed some late on in the fight, a lot of uppercuts and inside clean punches.
I think if Bryant Jennings of 4 years ago would have knocked him out at the end of the fight just through attrition, because I don't think, from what I saw, I'm not real sold that Joyce can take a punch. I'm not sold Dubois can, but once again, I'm just high on Dubois because I'm so low on everybody else, and I think that Dubois may be the best of a mediocre bunch. Hopefully, Usyk or one of those guys will come up and do it.
I think Dubois and Ajagba probably the two most exciting prospects.
Yeah,
but Ajagba really hasn't fought anyone. I don't think he's fought.
Yeah, but I think Michael Montero either.
No, I think Michael Montero made a good point, though. Guys like Kevin Johnson and Nathan Gorman, I think those are not bad competition at this stage of his career. With Jagba, the only guy he fought was, I think, Amaya Mansour was close to 50, and the other guy he fought walked out the ring. So I don't know if you could counter fight with a guy.
Well, from what I've seen from Jagba, most guys have laid down.
Yeah, Jagba hits hard.
Yeah,
he's a good prospect.
Yeah, between those two and Usyk, maybe we can get 3 good heavyweights. But, it's just like over here in the NFL or any sport, they'll talk about how it's, parity. Parity is usually a code word for mediocrity, and I think that's what we got. Real quick, we talked about Bet Now at the start of the show, and they've got a couple lines up here that I find really interesting. I was going to run past you guys before we talk about Pernell Whitaker a little bit. And it looks like right now Oscar Rivas is a plus 415 underdog against Dillian White. That seems, and I'm not a big Rivas fan, but to me, Jeremiah, that seems a little long on the odds of plus 415 in a heavyweight fight.
Are those good odds or bad? I'm not too sure.
That means that Oscar Rivas is over a 4-1 underdog against Dillian White.
I actually think Rivas is live in that fight. If there's one fight that I think right now that Dillian White has fought in the last couple of fights, I think might actually beat him or knock him out. I'm not saying I'm picking him, but I think Rivas is alive. I picked White to beat Chisora and Parker as well. I don't think many people thought he's going to beat Parker, but I think this fight could be the banana skin or the tough one out the bunch.
All right, Jeremiah. I think you agree with this, don't you?
Yeah, I do. I think those odds are pretty long for a fight like this, especially I mean, to me, stylistically. Exactly. I mean, White is he's a good fighter, but like pretty much everybody in the heavyweight division, it seems like his time is going to come one of these days. I mean, it just seems like a matter of time that all these guys are going to get upset. Maybe Tyson Fury has. I think I'm the highest on him. Just with the likelihood of him, kind of retaining his skill and staying atop. But then again, I have a lot of questions too, just because of his past. But yeah, I think the odds are a bit long here. I mean, Dillian White is a damn good fighter, and his left hook is arguably the best in the division. He's got significantly more experience than Rivas does, but Rivas was also an Olympian. I mean, this guy has amateur background as well, and when I look at them stylistically, Rivas to me is actually a tighter puncher than Dillian White is. Well, White to me is not technically that good. He hits heavy, but then again, so do a lot of other guys. And, he's got the size in this as well, but White is not going to box. He's going to come at Rivas. And to me, that plays literally into Rivas's hands better than, like a guy like Joseph Parker or some of these other guys. So I think there's a good chance that White may be upset here. I'm picking White, again, just because he's more experienced. He's been, through rougher fights with, he was almost out of there against Parker in the final round, and, Chisora, and, he had some slight back and forth with Anthony Joshua, though he by and large lost just about every round in that except the round that he hurt Joshua. But to me, stylistically, I think White wins. I do, but I think there's a serious chance that Rivas could upset him. 4-1 to me is just too long, and I think might be worth putting a little money on.
Yeah, I think it definitely is at 4-1.
I want to add this. I know a lot of people do mock Luis Ortiz and his resume, rightly so, but because I was saying this recently until I think it was David Day saying that Rivas beat Andy Ruiz as an amateur. In the professional ranks, the only guy that, now I'm looking at his record as well, that's to my note, the only guy he's beaten that's with note was Brian Jennings, who Ortiz, I think, is one of the only few names that Ortiz beat as well. Apart from that, the other guys I could see that recognized is Maldonado, and I'm pretty sure Michael Hunter knocked him out. Apart from that, I don't see many names I recognize. It's Joey Abel, but that's like a journeyman in his first couple of fights. And with Jennings, to my knowledge, he was getting outboxed by Brian Jennings for about 11 and a half rounds, I thought. And I don't know if he won every round, but it looked like he lost the majority of those rounds. And then he got clipped, and Jennings doesn't punch hard enough. I don't know if that was a detriment, the fact that he can't crack at that level or is not where he was. But then Rivas was still fresh and just managed to knock him out. I don't know if that was the main factor, but that's quite worrying, the level of competition. The only thing I give him a chance is because to me it just looks like Dillian White. I do agree. I don't think he's the most technical fighter, and he can get knocked out. He's a bit wild with the left hook, so that's why I give him a chance. But I don't know. Rivas would have to knock him out. I don't think they're going to give Rivas any favors, the judges or the referees. I mean, he's just been... That fight's for the now interim belt, so it looks like if Dillian White wins that, he's the mandatory challenger for Wilder's belt.
All right. I agree, because I think Dillian White's going to whip his ass, because I don't see what Jeremiah sees in Oscar Rivas. But I've been wrong before, just not when arguing with Jeremiah. Next up, actually, I'm going to bring up one time where I was, because I told him he should bet on Keith Thurman. He said, I'm going to wait, because it was plus 115. Now today on betnow.eu, where if you want to bet on this fight, whatever money you put in an account as you open the account, if you use the promo code TRUTH50, you will get a 50% cash back bonus. So if you put $50 in, you'll have $75 to play with. If you put $1,000 in, you'll have $1,500 to play with. I'm pretty good at math. So Keith Thurman is now plus 130. Manny Pacquiao is 40 years old, Jeremiah. How can Keith Thurman be plus 130? I know he's not looked good lately, but when's the last time Manny Pacquiao fought somebody that was good and he looked impressive?
Yeah, I mean, he's still a damn good fighter. I don't know. I think maybe a lot of people are putting a lot of emphasis on Thurman's performance against Josecito Lopez. Maybe they go back to Luis Collazo fight when he was hurt with a body shot. And Collazo is a southpaw like Pacquiao. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of reading into this that I've noticed. I mean, and when I saw about 3-4 major polls put out after Manny Pacquiao won, or maybe it was after Keith Thurman's last fight, and they all favored Manny Pacquiao. And of course, that could just be a popularity contest. I don't know exactly who was voting. But I just think much too much is being made of Keith Thurman's performance against Josecito Lopez. I've met Lopez. He's a nice dude. He's a warrior. He's been a lot of fun fights. He's even upset some guys, like when he broke Victor Ortiz's jaw. That was a good one. Got his ass whipped against Canelo Alvarez. Of course, naturally, though, he was a 140-pounder. But
And Canelo was probably on steroids.
Yeah, who knows? But that's my thing is I just think they're putting too much emphasis on Keith Thurman's faults, and I think there may be some validity to it. Again, we won't know until actually fought. What?
What about activity, though? He hasn't fought anyone outside one fight in 2 years?
Yeah. Well, and that kind of plays into the mix, too, is not only his inactivity, but his performance against Josecito Lopez. And on top of that, a lot of people are questioning his heart. I mean, the fact that he was out for 2 years, it's a lot of people are thinking to themselves, does he really want to be involved? Is this what he wants to do? Is this how he wants to get paid? Those are all valid questions. And we won't know until fight night. But personally, I just think too much is being made about all of that. I think Keith Thurman is going to be up for this fight. I think he's going to be much closer to the Porter guy that we saw. And I think because of Manny Pacquiao's age, I think Thurman's going to beat him. I think he's going to win a fairly clear decision. Pacquiao's going to be competitive. He almost always is. But I think Thurman's going to turn it up in this one. I think he's going to box. He's going to brawl. I think he's going to be smart. To me, Thurman's he's one of the more well-rounded guys in the sport. I mean, you look at his performances against Danny Garcia and Sean Porter. I mean, he mixed it up really well. Again, he boxed sometimes. He brawled sometimes. And I actually thought he was at his best when he was fighting on the inside. And I thought he was able to beat Porter and Garcia at both facets of their game. But I think he takes a decision here. I just think too much is being made of it. Yeah.
Well, I think it's what we've seen in the past. I mean, hell, Muhammad Ali, I think, was only a 7-5 underdog by the time the bell rang for his fight against Larry Holmes. Marciano Lewis was almost even. I think this, to me, I mean, I have second thoughts about it, but I think the second thoughts may just be because I've watched Manny Pacquiao's entire career, and I think it's hard for people to grasp when somebody like this may be done. And I can't see picking a 40-year-old to beat a guy. I don't see this happening.
I think people are making too much of the age. No, I've made predictions in the past. I'm not going to call myself an expert, but I think I know what to read in a fight. I managed to predict both the Canelo Triple G fights to the letter, so I do think I know what I'm looking at.
So wait a second, did you pick Canelo to win both fights?
I predicted the first one would be a draw, in a controversial draw. I think I got that right. And then the second one, I said Canelo would win in a majority of split decision.
I think you got them both wrong because I thought Triple G won both fights.
No, but I'm talking about the official.
Nobody gives. You know what? I gave up. I'm like 50 years old. I started ignoring official decisions when I was about 15.
I thought Triple G won the first fight 7-5, but I don't think the draw. Watching it live, I'm talking about live. I don't think the draw was out the question. I think I
think it was. I think the second fight, a draw may have been all right, but I had it 8-4 in the first fight.
Live, I thought it was a lot closer. I think on rewatch, I do agree. I think Golovkin clearly won a close, competitive fight. I think you could argue anywhere between 8-4 and 7-5. But I was going to see.
Do you think Pacquiao's going to win this fight?
When it was made, I thought Thurman took the fight way too soon because he was talking about the comeback year. He said, he said he didn't want to fight Spence, so. I thought he's going to want to fight another Josecito Lopez, and that was out of his own mouth. So I was quite surprised. Looking on the last performance, I mean, people keep making a thing about the age, but activity matters. Pacquiao has been active. He's been fighting consistently top 10 welterweights. I know he hasn't looked great against guys like Jeff Horn, even though I thought he got robbed. But even with Broner, I saw the timing was a bit off. But Thurman's timing, I'm not too sure if it was what it was. It was early on against Lopez, but he did get buzzed in that fight as well, and I thought he almost got knocked out. He's virtually out on his feet at one time. So activity matters. Guys, when they've taken years out, look at Ward when he fought Kovalev. He had about 2 or 3 years out. He still had about 3 fights in. I think 2 of them were basically sparring sessions. But in the one fight he had, I thought, looking on that performance, I thought he might not be ready for someone like Kovalev, who's been active. And on fight night, I actually did think Kovalev was going to win that fight. I didn't get that right in terms of the actual prediction. I don't think I made any prediction, but I did think Ward would either win a controversial decision or Kovalev would either outbox him or maybe knock him out. But that matters. I think, look, Ali took a couple of years off. No, he didn't take them, but when he was, in exile, I'm not too sure if Thurman is where he was. I think people are banking way too much into the past. I do still think I understand why people are picking Thurman, and I do still think he might be the slight favourite just based on terms of I think Pacquiao's reflexes have slowed down, but I'm not too sure if it's what some people think. Like, I don't think it's a walk in the park for Thurman. On the other hand, I don't think it's a walk in the park for Pacquiao as well, but I do think it's a lot, to me, closer 50-50 in terms at this stage of Thurman's career and Pacquiao's career as well. I think Pacquiao might have one last performance left, and the thing is with Thurman, I don't think I'm too sold onto the chin. The way I see Thurman is favourite is the footwork and the legs. He's got the better legs. He's the faster guy on the feet. If he uses his legs and doesn't get caught into a fight, I could see him maybe running with a decision, maybe a close decision. But I think he gets drawn into fights way too much, and I do think Pacquiao might clip him. But for prediction, I'm not really too sure. I think it's a fight that could go either way.
All right.
Pick Hamed.
Yeah, you got to pick it, Hamed. You just bragged that you've never had a fight wrong. So come on.
You can't say you can't say all that shit.
Yeah, now you can't back off and say that you've missed some before. You just got to roll with it now, Hamed. Who do you got?
I'll go with my hat, and I think Pacquiao might have maybe just enough to, I think, take it home. I don't think Thurman might not be ready, but it won't surprise me one way or the other. I think Thurman is the younger man, and it is a young man's sport. I just think Thurman, he's been way too inactive.
All right, so write that down, Jeremiah. Hamed picks. Hamed picks Manny Pacquiao by first round knockout. Right. All right.
It's in the record.
All right, so Pernell Whitaker passed away a couple days ago. The thing that stood out to me about Pernell Whitaker is, number one, I think he's the greatest lightweight I have seen in my lifetime. I think he would have beat any lightweight that I have seen. And I've seen Roberto Duran because I'm that old. But I think a lot of that's style. But I also think that when we look at this Jeremiah, this is a guy that, like his 7th fight, he's beaten John Montez, who was a tough dude. He beat Alfredo Lane in like his 10th fight. Lane was a guy who I think right before that had upset Wilfredo Go. Who the hell am I thinking of? Because we just talked about this the other night. Was it Gomez?
Yeah, it was Gomez. It was Gomez,
okay. Yeah. And then he comes out, and like in his first 11 or 12 fights, he's beaten all these guys. He dominates Roger Mayweather. Dominated Jose Luis Ramirez, even though he lost, because that was a one-sided ass whooping, no matter what they said. Dominated Greg Haugen. Greg Haugen was a solid, tough guy. Beats Azuma Nelson. Freddie Pendleton, whose record doesn't show how good he was, knocked out Juan Navarro, I think, in the first round. And I think that might have been on the undercard of Dokes and Ruddock, but I'm not sure. But when I look at this guy and what he did, he was pretty special, and he dominated Julio Cesar Chavez, no matter what anybody thinks. I think was that a welterweight or junior welterweight, though? But
technically it was welterweight.
Yeah, but when I look at this, if I picture Pernell Whitaker in a ring with Roberto Duran, I don't picture that turning out really good for Duran.
Jeremiah. Yeah.
What I tell you?
Yeah.
That's an easy question.
Well, I don't know anything about Whitaker, so I don't know why you're including me in this discussion. But Yeah, I don't get it. I don't know what to say. No, I'm kidding. But
whatever.
I wrote the article on Pernell Whitaker. He's part of my series in the greatest defensive fighters ever. I watched his career from front to back. We had Greg Haugen on for an interview. And, Whitaker was a special, special guy. I mean, I'm not going to call him versus Duran, but one thing you might find interesting
You
was
have to, because Hamed's going to pick it in a minute, and that's who wins.
Yeah, well, then
right,
my
Hamed.
opinion doesn't matter. Well, it doesn't matter because whatever Hamed said is set in stone. It's the law, anyways. It's been etched into the tablets. So, I'm not going to call it. But I did see somebody discussing the fight actually, and it was from a pretty well-known boxing source. God, I can't think of who it was right now, but he was saying that he thinks if Duran and Whitaker had fought, Whitaker would do as if he did against Julio Cesar Chavez and kind of meet him, kind of stand his ground and, not move as much as he did like in the Ramirez fight, especially the rematch where he pretty much just circled the whole time.
The thing is this, because people have this picture that Duran had trouble with movers, which he did a little bit of lightweight with DeVere Wet Brothers.
Pretty much everybody does.
Yeah, but the thing is this. I think people forget. Go back and look at film in 1973 or 74, 75 of Duran. Duran had great feet. He moved side to side really well. And I just think that people read too much into what they see when Duran gets older, when they're trying to compare him at lightweight. Because when I say that I think Whitaker beats him, I by no means think that's easy. I think that probably where they fight will tell you actually who wins the fight, wink, wink, if you know what I mean, and who the promoter that's running it is. So I think this is a toss-up because I think when I look at lightweights, you got, Benny Leonard, Duran, Whitaker, Joe Gans, guys like that to me, and they're hard to compare, but Pernell Whitaker is definitely in that group when you talk about the greatest lightweights.
Yeah, and I think it's because he's so unique stylistically is what makes him a handful for anybody who ever fought at 135. Duran, Gans, Leonard, Ortiz, Chavez, obviously. I mean, Ike Williams, tons and tons of guys. I mean, he's just that unique, and it's not even just his defensive ability. It's his offense as well. I mean, he was a consistent jabber. It was technical. It was active. He was an underrated body puncher. He was a good in-fighter, had lots of nuance there. I mean, he was a fantastic fighter, and this is why you see credible people putting Sweet Pea in the top 5 of the lightweight division. And the lightweight class might be the greatest ever when you break it down. I mean, think about it. Joe Gans could be in a pound-for-pound top 10. Duran typically is. Benny Leonard can get there. Henry Armstrong, if you rate his work there, if you say, hey, that was his best class, because I think you could make that argument because a lot of people look at Henry Armstrong's career and they're like, oh, well, he's a featherweight titleist. Well, when you look at the weights themselves, he was actually a lightweight for most of his career. Most of his technically featherweight belts or featherweight fights were actually, closer to the lightweight division. So again, you got Gans, you got Duran, you got Leonard, you got Armstrong, Ike Williams, the guy I know, Bert. He saw Ike Williams live and has seen every lightweight since. He said Ike Williams was the best lightweight he ever saw uncuffed, and of course he means without mafia influence, because anybody who's familiar with Ike Williams' career knows that the mafia had some say, and it's part of the reason why he got screwed out of a lot of fights too. Anyways, it's an absolutely loaded division. Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., arguably the greatest Mexican ever, was there. Alexis Arguello, sorry. I mean, it's a loaded division.
Canzaneri. You can't forget.
Tony Canzaneri was there. Barney Ross, I think, even fought there. Jimmy McLarnin fought there. Sugar Ray Robinson fought there. He started his career at lightweights, and the only reason he didn't get a shot at Sammy Angot's titles because Angot didn't want it, so they had an over-the-weight contest. I mean,
well, how about this?
It's
what
possible.
About Freddie Welsh, the Welsh Wizard?
Yeah, Welsh is absolutely underrated. Tons of great fighters who fought there. Young Griffo, George Kid Levine, on and on and on. But a lot of credible people put Sweet Pea in the top 5, and I don't argue that just because of the head-to-head matchups. But Whitaker was a phenomenal fighter, and he was a pound-for-pound guy, through the 90s, not the entire time, but for up until 1995, I think he was pound-for-pound number 1, if I'm not mistaken. I think
he was in the discussion the whole
fought
time.
Oscar De La Hoya is when
93 to 97, I think it was.
Yeah, I think he
was
fought
that
him in
was that what it was?
97.
Yeah,
okay.
4 or 5 years, I think.
Okay, all right. Yeah, Whitaker was great. There's no doubt about that. The opposition, unfortunately, again, you got to put it into context as well, because when you look at 135, just about any modern division anymore, you don't get a lot of. You may get strong periods, you may get like brief golden periods, but they're typically not sustained because there's so few pounds between all of these weight divisions, and there's so many titles that a lot of these guys just don't, some guys stay at 130, they don't move up to 135, so you just get less flexibility. So, Whitaker was not able to fight all the best guys that he wanted to, but you look at what he did against Julio Cesar Chavez, and there was a guy on Twitter. There was actually a Mexican journalist on Twitter who wrote for a magazine. It might have even been the Mexican Sports Illustrated. I don't know, Spanish version. I don't know. It just looked like it. He had the audacity to get on public and say that he scored it a draw. It wasn't that controversial.
Was it a Golden Boy?
What?
Was it the Golden Boy guy? I forgot his name.
Aragon Garcia.
Yeah, right. No, Garcia's not that old, and his
How about
writing
this?
is.
I'll give you this. If I put together a top 10 lightweights of all time, Chavez wouldn't be in my top 10.
Yeah, I wouldn't blame you, because I don't think he accomplished enough at that weight.
I think a guy like Carlos Ortiz accomplished more than he did. Ortiz beat Joe Brown. I think he beat Ismael Laguna, Sugar Ramos, Flash Elordi. Another guy that I don't think you mentioned was Lou Ambers. And Ambers beats Fritzy Zivic. And I think
he beat Armstrong too.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah, beat him in the rematch. Yeah. Of course, but there was Lou Jenkins, one of the biggest hitters the class has ever seen. The class is just phenomenal.
Who was the dude that fought Gans in those long fights? Battling Nelson. What about Battling Nelson?
Yeah, Battling Nelson. Yeah, Battling Nelson. It's funny because when he was fighting, some doctor said he had the thickest skull he'd ever seen, and that's why he was able to fight like 40 rounds plus. And I think when he fought Ad Walgast, it was one of the most brutal fights in boxing history. But yeah, Nelson, actually Jack Blackburn, the trainer of Joe Louis, he was an excellent lightweight as well.
He was a great one, and he gave guys like I think Sam Langford, Harry Greb, Joe Gans, gave them all hell.
Well,
and I think I read something where he fought like over 300 or 400 fights too.
Yeah, he did fight guys like Langford consistently. He fought Gans a number of times. He fought a lot of good fights. He didn't give Greb any trouble. He was way past the best. Yeah, he was way past the best at that point.
Is there any footage of Harry Greb? Because that's one guy you've.
No, the only thing I've ever seen, which is what I got, I think, in the late 90s, was like a few minutes of training footage. So there's probably somebody got it hidden in their closet or something, waiting to spring it out. At least that's what I'm hoping.
Yeah, well, the thing about Harry Greb is, there's been a huge biography written by Steve Compton on him, and apparently the fight with Mickey Walker. God, I'm thinking of like Mark Wahlberg and Ad Walgast and Midget Walgast and all that.
He'd have kicked Mark Wahlberg's ass.
Yeah, I think
Donnie,
so. Donnie,
I don't know though. That could have been a toss-up. Donnie get a little drunk, it could be a fight.
Yeah, I want to see Donnie Wahlberg versus Frank Stallone. That's my celebrity matchup. But the thing about Harry Greb is he fought Mickey Walker, and that was actually filmed, but nobody knows what the hell happened to it. It's possible that it's out there somewhere. It might even be in a collector's. It might be in his basement somewhere, because a lot of these guys don't reveal what they have. Actually, Steve Compton, the guy I'm talking about who wrote the Harry Greb biography, on Facebook, he's putting out stills all the time of fights that he has that just about nobody has. And, people have asked him, they're like, why don't you put it on YouTube or whatever? He's like, well, it loses its value. And what right do you have to look at it? So, there are a lot of people like that. And we haven't seen Greb on film, but impressive enough. Had
I
Jack
think
Black...
he's got a point. People make it as a business, like because it's hard to get footage of some of these fighters. Like, I think Harry Greb is probably one of the greatest ever fighters, but if you got no footage, it is hard to rank and rate or compare careers. Because I mean, just going on the box record, just going off records or the guys they fought, it is quite hard. But I think some people, yeah, they do that for as a business. Because I don't know about the person you talk about. Some people can do it to make money as well. Because
there's a
if you
lot of
can't
people
fight,
that do that to make money. They do it with all
yeah,
sports. They hide they just, or it's like NFL games. There used to be a time when you could only get like the first half, only the first half of a Super Bowl existed. And then 10 years later, the whole game comes out. So what the dude did was he sold that first half of footage for a couple years, chilled out for a while, then sold the rest of the game for a few more years. Doubled his money.
yeah.
I hate people. But
Yeah, Jeremiah,
Yeah,
I don't mean to, yeah, you were saying something?
yeah, no, yeah. What I was going to say though is, if Jack Blackburn had not gotten in the Hall of Fame as a trainer, he would have gotten in as a fighter. I mean, and interesting enough, that would have mean Harry Greb had fought 16 Hall of Famers and beaten 15 of them. I know there's no footage of them, but that's pretty damn impressive.
that's
that's
impressive.
hard to ignore. I've tried to use that logic with Jeremiah too, in two things. Number one, I think Jeremiah is right a little bit. Number two, Jeremiah doesn't like logic.
Yeah, exactly.
No,
I'm a dumbass if you haven't noticed, Ahmed.
Oh my God! Now you sound like Steve Risley. Go ahead.
I made a ranking on Twitter a couple of, I think it's months ago, and Harry Greb was quite high. When I was comparing all the records and who they fought, it was quite hard to do it, but you could tell a lot of these guys, especially Harry Greb, I think he's one of the greatest fighters, and I think even as a middleweight, he was ranked very highly, but it's hard to ignore a lot of these fighters when you look at the guys they fought, how many fights they had, how many knockouts they had, how much consistently they were fighting. It wasn't even like a year in year out. Some of these guys were fighting regularly in 1 month, and it's hard to compare stats like that. But it is hard to also see how they fought and how they won their fights if there's no footage as well. That's the bad thing as well, I think, because it is always good to see some of these great fighters how they actually fought as well.
Yeah, I would say that, the thing about Greb is, what if we do find some film, but it's like shitty, grainy film and you can't really see anything? I mean, that's my thing too, is it's like, how many modern fighters would look like crap under those conditions too, whether it's sped up or slowed down, or, you got black stuff rolling down the side continuously, or, there's no sound. I mean, it probably plays to Greb's credit that there is no film, because there's a certain mystique about it. But then again, I still wonder. It's like, what if we did find film and he just had a bad round? Like, we only got a round of footage and it wasn't a good round, or maybe he was just warming up for filling the guy out. Especially when you fought that much. I mean, even a guy like Harry Greb, if you read the old timers and some of the stuff that they said, some of these guys, they would fight often, but they wouldn't put a lot of power behind their punches until, because back during his day, you had newspaper decisions. So during the newspaper decisions, you wouldn't try to knock a guy out, so you would save your hands and you would pull back a little bit. It's like, what if we see something like a newspaper decision and he's not trying to knock a guy out or something? Like, I don't know. There's a lot of nuance that goes into that too. But of course, we're talking about Pernell Whitaker, so just try to steer us back there. But yeah, I mean, Whitaker was obviously one of the greatest lightweights ever. And again, you often hear people say that Julio Cesar Chavez was the greatest Mexican fighter ever. I think you can make that case. I think most people believe it. Of course, other people substitute Salvador Sanchez. I think that's fine too. I've even heard people say Ruben Olivares belongs there. Again, I'm pretty open-minded with that sort of stuff, but Chavez is typically the leader, and Whitaker boxed his ears off. I mean, to me, what did Sports Illustrated? I mean, they put on the cover, robbed, right? Yeah. I mean, and they scored at what, 117, 111 or something? I mean, to me, it was a runaway.
That might have been a little close too, because I don't remember thinking that Chavez won too many rounds. But
yeah,
and the thing with Greb is, A lot of times it's better not to see it and just kind of imagine what it would have been like. Because, like Babe Ruth, there's no complete games. You just see the home runs. You don't see any of the bad stuff. And the thing that we've lost in sports was so much video footage of everything. And I think that's why there's really no mythical figures in sports anymore. We know these guys warts and all, you know, and
we know what they're eating and drinking and
yeah,
everything because they're posting on Instagram.
Yeah, we know everything. I mean, with Muhammad Ali, there was no social media then, so yeah, you saw his fights. But a lot of Ali, and a lot of Joe Louis, all this stuff is just kind of hearsay. And then you know how it is. If you're sitting around a table with 10 people, if you start whispering to somebody what would happen, by the time it gets back to you, it's 10 times bigger than what it was. And I think this, in the long run, in the end, I don't think that's necessarily such a bad thing.
Yeah, I was going to say with Whitaker, I think Ward hit it on the nail on the head. I wasn't old enough to cover his career or watch even the tail end of his career fights, but I have seen footage in a couple of fights, and especially the big fights. I do think I've never seen Willie Pep, but I do think what I've heard and read about Willie Pep that he's, I think, alongside him, arguably the greatest defensive fighter. But I also think Whitaker was probably one of the greatest ever fighters as well. I think he was better than Mayweather. I think people get it misconstrued that he fought the better. Whitaker, Pernell Whitaker.
Oh,
I wrote the
doubt.
article on him as well, and I've uploaded that on my.
Yeah, you're not
Twitter
allowed
page.
to talk about that because you don't write for us. You write for some other people.
I've only got into this recently, but I have been looking at getting on to write for other outlets as well. I was going to say, though, with Whitaker, I thought he fought the better version of De La Hoya and arguably might have got robbed. And that's one of Mayweather's best wins. And then you look at Chavez as well. That was a robbery, you could say. And then the Ramirez fight as well. So the only guy to beat him really was Tito Trinidad. And the last guy who fought him, which was, I think he was way past his best in both of those fights. But I don't think anyone really definitively beat him when he was in his prime, or even when he was past his prime with De La Hoya. And I think a lot of people try misplaying that De La Hoya fight, but if you look at that fight, he made De La Hoya miss so many times, and the aim of the game is hit and not get hit, and I think De La Hoya was just punching air. I don't know how...
I actually had De La Hoya edging the fight a little bit, but I wouldn't complain either way.
Yeah, it was a lot more competitive.
The fight that was most interesting to me and the most impressive to me for him was he takes 2 years off after that and fights Felix Trinidad, and he didn't win the fight, and he may have only won a round or two, maybe 3, but he was really competitive against a prime Trinidad.
Yeah, that I think shows how good he was, because the thing with Mayweather, I don't want to get too much into Mayweather because it is about Whitaker who passed away, but I don't think Mayweather took those type of risks. I think the only risk was Canelo when he was, as you could say, past his prime or in his mid-30s. But fighting Trinidad, De La Hoya, those are two fights that Whitaker, I think, was way past his best, and he gave a good account of himself. And the biggest fight, he also fought Chavez when Chavez was in his prime, unbeaten, and got robbed. I don't think Mayweather, the only thing I could compare, if Mayweather had fought someone like Manny Pacquiao when he was in his prime, and I don't know if people rank Chavez better than Pacquiao. I personally don't think, because I think...
Oh, no. I think Manny Pacquiao would have kicked Chavez's ass.
And Chavez arguably really should have lost to Meldrick Taylor as well. I think that was, in a way, a robbery as well. I think that a bit different.
Fight.
Who was zagging?
Nothing funny would happen with Don King being involved in it for us.
Yeah, I didn't cover all of Chavez's fight, but those were both controversial fights. And with Meldrick Taylor, is only a second or 2 seconds left, and they stopped it. But
and if you missed it, Jeremiah did say that Chavez lost his 12th fight.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm not too sure who that was against.
Jeremiah.
Okay, I didn't know it was a question. Sorry, but
I
yeah,
don't
well,
think we really
you,
realized what you said until after we thought about it. So go ahead.
now it's processed, but you got to
Yeah.
be careful, Hamed. Talking bad about Mayweather, you're really going to isolate our listening fan base.
Not
Well, I'm
really.
actually defending
No, I'm kidding.
Mayweather
I'm
as
kidding,
well.
I
man.
know.
I'm kidding. But yeah, he did actually lose his 12th fight. And if you look at the go YouTube go YouTube. I think it was his first title fight, and you'll see that he was actually like 44-1 or something like that. So what happened was he lost his 12th fight on a foul, and then the commission, oddly enough, you never hear this sort of thing in boxing, so I was shocked reading it. But Chavez's manager was actually part of the commission that overturned that decision. And yeah, so initially it was a loss, and then again, oddly, again, both you should be shocked as well. That decision was overturned. But yes, Chavez initially did lose his 12th fight, and not only was the Taylor fight controversial, the Whitaker fight baloney, but he also quit in the rematch with Frankie Randall. I mean, Randall was whipping his butt again, and then he bowed out in that one. So to me, I still have to give credit where credit is due. Chavez did beat some damn good fighters. We had Ruben Castillo on this show before, and he said even of Salvador Sanchez and Alexis Arguello, two other guys that he fought, he said without a doubt that Chavez was the best of all of them. So I give credit where credit is due, because Chavez did beat Castillo. He did beat Mario Martinez, who wasn't that bad. He did, beat all sorts
the best Chavez was at less than 135. I think it was more to 126, 122.
Yeah.
So,
But go ahead.
so I was just gonna say, so he fought into the mid 2000s. Like that's now looking back, like I wasn't into boxing as much as I was now, but that's shocking as well. I think I remember checking Roberto Duran when he retired. So he was fighting into the 2000s, but
Yeah, he fought William Joppy for the middleweight title when he was like 47 years old. I don't know what's funnier, the fact that he did that or the fact that William Joppy actually was a middleweight champion.
But I was gonna say with Chavez, Frankie Randall was the first guy to officially beat him. And is that who it was?
Yeah, that's right. That was the first official loss.
Because then De La Hoya beat him, but a lot of people did say he was past his best. I'm not too sure if they were referring to the second fight, because he actually got knocked out.
Talking about both.
The first fight, if I remember right, he got cut bad. Real quick, we've got a question from at the final tally. How do you think the version of Whitaker who lost narrowly to De La Hoya would have fared against Spence or Crawford today, Jeremiah?
Ooh, that's a good question.
God, why you gotta have me go first, man? Hand the mic over to Ahmed and let him try to figure this out.
But
No,
Ahmed's
but no,
going to give us the winner because he picks 100% winners. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. So let me pick the loser unless Ahmed agrees with me. But okay, so Whitaker, I think he beats both. I just don't think that any of these guys have proven enough.
Well, they've never faced anything near that competition.
Yeah.
Ever.
I think he beats Spence.
Exactly.
Easy. I don't think there's a question, Spence.
Yeah, I think he beats both. I mean, to me, Spence stylistically is fun. He's got a lot of appeal there. Guys like Thurman. I think Terrence Crawford is. I think that's an iffy one. I still have to see Terrence Crawford against the best welterweight in the world when the PBC side finally clear. The smoke finally clears there. But Crawford to me looks, again, I'm favoring Whitaker over all these guys, but Crawford looks like the best bet to beat that version of Whitaker. But again, I'm not quite convinced. He's got to beat the best.
Yeah, he looks like the Evander Holyfield of the group. He's the real deal.
Yeah, I think Crawford would give him the most problems, but I think if someone was to ask how Mayweather would get on with those two, I think those two might have had a better chance against Mayweather. I'm not too sure with Spence at the moment. I don't know. We still don't know how good he is, because if you look at the resume, it is quite thin. I think we should find out a bit more
It's
against
thin
Porter.
for Crawford too, though.
Crawford, yeah, that's true. You could argue that, but Crawford has actually gone through a couple of weight classes. It's just he's been much superior, and it's just I don't think the talent has been there in those weight classes. With Spence, he hasn't had enough fights as on top of that, and he hasn't really fought the top guys who have actually been in his weight class. I'm not too sure if you could blame him, but he hasn't fought the likes of Thurman, Porter, even Crawford. Yeah, I think he will eventually fight him, but at the moment it is quite hard to see how good he is. I do think though Whitaker would beat Spence. With Crawford, maybe he might be a bit more tougher, but Whitaker would have beaten him. With Mayweather, I think Mayweather Crawford, I think would have been a really interesting fight. I'm not too sure if Mayweather would have beaten him. With Spence, I think Spence would maybe have a puncher's chance with Mayweather. I think apart from that, Mayweather would probably outbox him to a decision.
All right, Jeremiah, anything else you want to talk about before we wrap it up? Because I just realized we're an hour and a half in.
Dang. No, I suppose I wanted to. Suppose I wanted to touch on the Whitaker Trinidad thing as well. And it's worth, if you didn't see Whitaker at his best, it's worth going back and watching his career from front to back. I mean, because a lot. We've been over this, Mike, but I just think much too much is being made of Whitaker's defense because it was certainly fantastic. And I've actually seen some Mayweather fanboys, and they're like, "Well, if you look at the CompuBox stats, Whitaker was hit more often than Mayweather." It's all about context, damn it! Listen,
competition.
Exactly. Well, the reason why Whitaker was touched more than Mayweather, that in itself, when people say, when they parrot the line from Mayweather and they're like, numbers, men lie, women lie, numbers don't lie. They obviously do fucking lie. What are you talking about? Especially in sport.
There's different forms of defense. Like one guy has got a guard up, the other guy, Whitaker, barely even needs to have his hands up sometimes. Like,
yeah, and it's not only that. I mean, but here's the thing: is if you throw more punches, you're going to get hit more. It's like when, you compare, Willie Pep with some of these guys. It's like if you go watch.
How about this? Let me ask you this, Jeremiah. Do you think Felix Trinidad in his prime? Do you think that Floyd Mayweather would even consider getting in a ring with him? Because of the power. Because, he didn't want to get in with Margarito. He didn't want to get in with Paul Williams. Didn't seem like he really wanted to fight anybody. It was a big-time banger. He didn't want to take that risk. Now, I think he did before he got to welterweight. But once he got to welterweight, things changed.
Yeah, and I think once he fought Oscar De La Hoya, I think his vision changed as well. I think he could, he felt like he could coast a bit more. I mean, that was the thing. That was his modus operandi, right? It was he would take on a Latin fighter in Cinco de Mayo, and then he would fight him around Mexican Independence Day. I mean, it was wash, rinse, and repeats, and a lot of these guys just weren't up to par. I mean, the Bertos, the Guerreros, the Ortizes of the world. Yeah, that's the other guy that I was thinking.
He beat a bunch of slightly above average fighters.
Yeah, well, and that's my thing is I think a lot of these guys, especially now, they're doing more risk calculation. It's like, well, why would I fight a guy like Paul Williams when I can fight this guy? You know what I mean? So I don't think Mayweather would like to enter the ring against Felix Trinidad had he lost against Jose Luis Castillo early in his career. I don't know. I actually think in an 8-division setup, if he was fighting in an old-time era, I don't think Floyd Mayweather ever jumps past lightweight. It's just the competition was steeper back then because, first off, the sport was more popular, and second off, the divisions were deeper because you didn't have all these super/junior divisions that amount. But the thing about Whitaker, again, is when people are like, hey, Whitaker got touched more than Mayweather. It's because he threw more. He fought more. Mayweather was content circling, pecking, poking, circling, and don't get me wrong, Mayweather's certainly one of the greatest defensive fighters ever. There's no doubt about that in my mind. I don't even care if somebody puts him number one. I don't care. Again, there's a lot of fluidity to me in the way you want to analyze these things. But Whitaker got hit more because he fought more. I mean, it's constantly talked about how defensively good he was, but go watch the fights. His jab was almost always working. He had no problem fighting on the inside with guys. He banged to the body consistently. again, he just put himself in that position. Even a guy like Willie Pep, who a lot of historians will say is the best defensive fighter ever, go watch the film. He was always jabbing, always moving, always engaging. He didn't just circle and circle and circle and then wait for a straight right hand and then move around. He didn't do that at all. Even Willie Pep said back in the day that, yeah, it's fine to box, it's fine to be slick, but you also got to fight. I mean, there was more emphasis on, offense back then as well. So, again, it's just about context, man. I think Whitaker...
Yeah. That's what I'm trying to say. In the pocket, it matters.
Right. Yeah, and not only that, it is also how you are defensively as well. It's like, Winky Wright, by CompuBox standards, probably got hit more than a lot of guys, some guys you would compare him to, but by fact of him just putting his gloves up and walking towards you, it may look like it. And of course, you got to acknowledge that CompuBox is not some end-all be-all either. I've seen tons of times where they count a punch landed, and I'm like, well, I don't know what the hell you're watching there. So, again, Whitaker is up there with the very greatest to ever do it. Again, if you rate him as the best defensive fighter ever, I think that's perfectly fine, but he was obviously up there.
Yeah.
I just wanted to...
Go ahead.
I just wanted to add, I think boxing fans generally are dumb.
That's true. There goes the rest
of
of our fan base. Thanks, Hamed.
No, because I was listening to the guy from Ring IQ, I think it's Julius on Facebook, who's debating someone, and the comment section, someone said Triple G Golovkin gonna defense or something really ignorant like that. I think people leave context out. I think, and Julius was the one who was replying. He made good points. Like, does he have the greatest defense? Probably not. Does he have a defense? I do think Golovkin is someone who does have a defense. He does have his hands up. He does actually block a lot of these shots. I don't think it's the greatest defense. He doesn't really move his head, and he has probably got a much better chin. But he has got some form of defense. I think same with Whitaker and Winky Wright, there's different forms of defense. If you're just going to go by defense, then I think this was someone was saying, and I think it was in a joking way, a while back when Pacquiao fought Clottey, you could argue if you just want to say defense, then Clottey might have had a better defense than Mayweather, because I remember when he had his shell up, very few shots were actually going through that guard, but did Clottey really come to win or stuff like that? I was saying with Mayweather, a lot of these fights, did he actually try and stop his opponents or actually try and go for the knockout? Where I'm not saying Whitaker was a big puncher as well, I'm just saying with context, a lot of these fights, Mayweather was actually on the back foot. He'd have his guard up, the shoulder roll, he'd be on the ropes, he'd pivot, turn, he'd be on his feet. And when I see a lot of the footage of Whitaker and a lot of the fights, he'd actually stay in the pocket and dodge, slip and slide, bob and weave in the pocket. And I think that takes a lot more skill. There is different forms of defense. It's not just one where you got the high guard up or shoulder roll and you're just making someone miss on the ropes. There is different forms of defense. And I think you can argue Whitaker might have had the better defense and maybe one of the best ever defense. I just think Whitaker was probably a better fighter, but I think it's more of the casual fan approach when they just used to seeing one form of either defense or way of blocking where they think that is the actual only way, where there is actually different forms of defense.
Yeah, it's like you said, they're dumbasses.
I was just going to say, is there anything else? Any fights? I was going to say, actually, another point was with Khan. That was another guy that I think Mayweather could have fought. And I wouldn't say duck, but that was a stylistically interesting fight. I think even though he ended up fighting Berto in a farewell fight, that would have maybe been an interesting fight. And I think with Mayweather, there's a lot more safety first. And that's why I think a lot more hardcore fans actually appreciate someone like Whitaker. He was a guy who was often the B-side in those big fights, who actually took more risks, fought the better fighters in their prime. And when he got blatantly robbed by Ramirez, I think a lot of people might have actually even quit. He actually ended up carrying on fighting and avenged that loss. And he got, I think, robbed by Chavez in what was his biggest fight. And to me, I think he was probably best fighter in the 90s. You're looking at the pound for pound ratings. I think the only other guy you could argue might have been Roy Jones, but I think Roy Jones, after the fights with Hopkins and Tony, to me, a lot of those names he fought, I don't think were really. I don't know. I think great. I think you've missed out the fight with McClellan, but then when he did go up to heavyweight, that was in the 2000s, so he kind of went after the 90s era. But I think in the 90s, Whitaker was probably the pound for pound, probably the greatest fighter of that era.
Alrighty. So are we done?
I'm good, man. I got my last word in.
Hey, Hamed, thanks as always for coming on the show. Always appreciate you having on. Always appreciate your opinion. Want to thank the guys at the Final Tally for the question. And I think there was a couple questions and comments, but that was like hours ago. I don't remember your names, but I really appreciate it, as does Jeremiah. So we're going to go ahead and wrap the show up, guys. We will be back tomorrow night. I think I might try to get a hold of John Scully tomorrow, see if he wants to come on and talk a little bit about Thurman and Pacquiao, and talk a little Beterbiev with us, since he's got a big fight coming up. So I'll try to get a hold of him. I want to remind everybody to make sure you check out the Retired Boxers Foundation with Jackie Richardson and Alex Ramos. And go to betnow.au if you're going to bet the fights this week. Got a couple one big underdog, one small underdog that might be worth betting. And if you go to betnow.eu and do that, you will get a 50% cashback bonus up to your first deposit of $1,000. So make sure you use the promo code TRUTH50. All right, guys, we are done. We will be back tomorrow night, whether you like it or not. So hopefully you guys will like it. Come back and listen to us. You can hear all of our shows on iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify. Wherever you find sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So for Hamed, Jeremiah, I'm Mike. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.